Black women are dying at alarming rates during childbirth compared to white women. 65% of these deaths are preventable. When Black women tell their birthing stories, it encourages healthcare providers to listen and empowers moms to expect and advocate for equitable and respectful care.
Hi, I'm Tara. Thank you so much for joining us, myself and a few friends, as we have conversations regarding our birthing stories and experiences. I remember, just being 17 years old and hearing that nurse scream down the hallway. And I couldn't hear what she was saying, but she was just yelling. And she came back in the room and she said, "Don't you ever let anyone treat you like that." And so I'm thinking, one, I'm afraid, I'm young, there's no one there to support me. And then she calmed down and she explained to me how dangerous it was for me to not receive proper care. And she was telling me everything that I needed to do, everything that I needed to have, that I did not have over the 2 days. So I did tear, and I had to get over 40 stitches. I remember asking for help, pressing the call light. They would come in, was really tired, received a lot of medicine, and didn't really understand what they were telling me. But on that last day before it was time for me to go, I had a discharge nurse. And this year, that's the one that was just really angry. And when she came back and told me everything that I needed over the 2 days, I was like, wow, I was dealing with all this pain and I didn't have to because I didn't know. I didn't have anyone there to support me, to advocate for me. And I feel now like even if you do have that person there, to still be educated enough to advocate for yourself.
My first two births were not good experiences, and then I ended up on a good note. My first birth, I had went and I had natural birthing classes because I was going to go to a natural birthing center. I was going to go without medication. That was my goal. And I never made it past triage. So they did not believe me and that my water had broke. So they had to test me and make sure that my water broke. And I went from there to a regular birthing room. And I'm like, when am I going to be transferred to the natural birthing center? And I never got there. They were forcing me, in my opinion, to get a C-section because when I kept saying no, they played on my husband and my mom and said, hey, I think that this is the safest way for her to go about it. I said, okay, well, I'm going to try for a VBAC. And you had a C-section once, like, it's so easy to get cut open again. Like, I'm like, no, I'm going to push this baby out. They're like, if you don't push hard enough, like, we'll be prepping you for a C-section. Like, who wants to hear that?
What?
Wow,
no other options.
Yeah, like
no other options. Just
so I took all of the, all I had to muster up and, push that baby out. But after that, I said never again. I went on and found a midwife and I found a doula.
Yes. And Asia, did you have a doula?
I did have a doula.
Oh, that's so amazing.
It's so interesting hearing how hard things work. Like if you don't know any better, how will you know how to advocate for yourself? Exactly. So my birthing story, everything was great through my birth, before the birth, everything was great. Had an amazing natural birth. I was able to be in a birthing center. Good. And afterwards, I also needed stitches because I tore as well. Seems to be the trend. And I went for my checkups afterwards and they were kind of just like, oh, it'll take time to heal. And oh, it's normal to be in pain for however long. And what was it? It was like 6 months later that I was like, okay, well, I'm still in pain. Yeah. And they're like, oh, maybe you should actually see someone else because you're not supposed to be in pain 6 months later. And I had to have a whole surgery for them to fix what was not stitched properly.
Similar to your situation, I had a C-section. I was told that my membranes have been ruptured for too long. And my labor wasn't progressing. And I agree that sometimes, our bodies they know what to do. So with me, I actually heard recently from a midwife that sometimes when your labor stalls, it means it could be more emotional and not necessarily something physical is going on. That was me. My support people were not there. I had some people there, but not the two people that I really needed to be there. And in hindsight, I'm thinking my body stalled labor on purpose just to give the people enough time to get there. But it was seen as some kind of physical issue. And so they intervened. I had a C-section. I hemorrhaged. I wound up going to the ICU, separated from my son. And I lost a lot of blood, about 2/3 of my blood volume. So they made that decision and it almost killed me.
That is absurd.
It is.
And I think that, like you said, you were telling them, like, no, I feel that my body is doing something different.
Well, not
from
necessarily,
what you're
because this
saying.
was my first baby and I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
know what to expect, what the process was going to be. I had an epidural, so I didn't feel anything at all at that point. And so this is what they were saying, and I took them at their word. And though I had like some friends there, I really didn't have an advocate or anyone to really speak for what I wanted or to ask those questions that I didn't think to ask because I was so stressed about everything that was going on and just trying to, push through and just have a baby that they said this is what I needed, and I kind of went along with it.
I was following my breastfeeding, stuff, all the information that I had learned before. And my baby was eating the way they were supposed to be eating.
Yes.
And still was not gaining the weight that they wanted her to gain. So everybody kept pressing me to switch the formula, your baby, blah, blah, blah. What had happened was she was pooping a lot. She was pooping about 5 times as much as they expected her to, which of course is volume lost. And she was also getting much longer, much faster. So if you see her now, you see she's the height of a 2.5-year-old, even though she's 1.5. They were like, okay, well, if you don't agree in our presence, we're going to have to take measures into our own hands. So I agree reluctantly, and they still call CPS. And it was crazy. I had to go to like 5 or 6 different organizations where I could get breastfeeding consultants, certified breastfeeding consultants, and pediatricians on my side to make sure that everything was in her chart and in this system to say that she is being taken care of, she's being well fed, all the breast milk is getting her good and healthy.
Eve, was breastfeeding a part of your plan, or
Something I wanted to do, at least give it a good, honest try. But with having the surgery and then the trauma and being separated, that really interfered with my milk supply. I didn't get a lactation consultant until my 4th day, and I was there 5 days. Because we started so late, I was actually discharged with like one of those supplemental systems where the formula was going through a tube, and then he was supposed to latch on. But no follow-up after that.
I do remember a lactation consultant coming in to tell me how to latch, but that was it. It was no education surrounding like how to properly breastfeed, the importance of it, or to even talk about what do I do when I get home. Luckily, he just did it so well, but there were times where I was like, I think I'm ready to give up. This is painful, it's stressful, we're both tired, and it was, if I had more education surrounding breastfeeding him properly, it would have been a greater experience. Definitely would have been a great experience.
We need, somebody from beginning in, and that's that doula and or midwife, because the midwife doesn't just when you check out. No, the midwife is not gone.
I didn't even know that a doula or a midwife was even an option when I was pregnant. And in hindsight, up until I actually had him, my pregnancy was fine. So I probably would have been a really good candidate for a midwife and a doula. And I'm very sure I would have had a much different outcome.
But I'm the same way. It was not even mentioned to me. So if you don't have that support person, like, what is the hospital, your nurse or your doctor saying to you when you come with that your birthing plan, and that they know it's no one else there? Like, or did they suggest like, oh, just have you checked out a doula? Are you interested in receiving a midwife or anything like that in an event where you don't have that support? That whole circle of care, I think that's what makes the experience. But the experience is based off who's around you, who's supporting you, how well those doctors are communicating with you. Because, they could have said, oh, just check into a doula or check into a midwife. And you go home, you may not even think about it. You think about food or going to sleep. And, when you have that circle of care where every person is saying the same thing to you, that gives an experience where you're more intentional about the decisions that you're making.
It's always, and a midwife and doula and all this stuff is expensive, but you're paying, let's say I'm making up a number, $3,000. That's so expensive, but you're getting somebody you get hour sessions. Like, I'm like, she's checking everything head to toe, and we're talking about birth plans. We're talking about how I'm eating, what I'm eating. Not only, you're eating fruits and vegetables. What kind of fruits and vegetables? Like, we're literally going in depth. I definitely think that you get what you pay for sure with a doula and a midwife. And then now, Medicaid has
started providing doulas.
Providing doula services.
See, you remember we were talking about stress a minute ago? My blood pressure generally sits a little bit low. And they were talking about, your blood pressure is shot up here, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, because y'all was telling me I wasn't progressing and all the stress was coming. But because I had this one great nurse and my doula, and I took all these classes, I knew how to control my breath to bring my blood pressure down so that all these people would back up.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was great. Really, it didn't get stressful and frustrating and terrifying until afterwards, when they were trying to get my baby taken by CPS for not being fast enough, and ignoring me about that stitches.
Yeah.
About being in pain about the stitches. Literally, I mentioned it at every baby appointment and at my appointments. And it was just like,
it's normal.
You just had a baby.
Feeling controlled. And
I know I had a baby.
That usually tends to be the answer. Well, you just had a baby. That doesn't mean...
We know that.
Right.
That's the facts.
Yeah,
that's why
I was there.
And I know you we want to scream and you're like, I'll just try to be patient in this room. And how do I do that? So, we have all these fears and emotions going on at the same time. We're still kind of trying to advocate for ourselves. We're trying to be polite. We're trying to advocate for our babies.
Exactly.
Yes. And then some of those, implicit biases come up and we're like, now I have second guesses now. Now I have different thoughts surrounding what I felt this experience would be like.
I really wasn't aware of implicit bias, and some of the things that they said or were doing were not necessarily in my best interest, but maybe more so for theirs, or from, their vantage point of being medical professionals. I really feel like healthcare providers would really benefit if they had more trauma-informed care training, things like that, to really recognize that some of our issues are emotional. I do feel like if someone recognized, or maybe just took a moment to say, okay, what's going on here? And kind of help me work through the emotional stress that I was dealing with and release it, I probably would have been able to vaginally deliver him.
Oh, that was so good. And I'm just thinking about, like you said, what type of trainings, are they receiving that they need more of, so they can understand that it's not all physical, it's emotional. And not only is it emotional for us, the delivering, but it's emotional for them, because they want to make sure that we are, that we stay alive during the process and that we are safe and what's in our best interest. But at the same time, how can we change that so that they hear us in the midst of that conversation?
Having this is encouraging and empowering, because, whereas you would think that, okay, I'm the only one, or, you don't understand something. If you're feeling like you're the only one, hey, I had a C-section, or, hey, I breastfed. It's some way we're interrelated or interconnected in some part of our birthing experience. And even so, if not, then somebody you're connected to is. So if I didn't have a C-section, I know somebody who did. Or if I couldn't be in a natural birthing center, I know somebody who did, and okay, I can experience that. But then on the opposite side, okay, I had a great home birthing experience, and afterwards she didn't. And then, even with you felt alone and nobody was listening to you, or you felt fear at a certain point. So we are interconnected. And when like I said, with the medical professionals, if they recognize, hey, we don't get that experience because we're in there for 15 minutes, maybe we can have an hour or a day or a week long seminar where we can get this information. Then we can, better help our clients. I think that'd be great.
As you were saying, like, just hear me.
Just hear me.
Hear me. I think that's
hear.
it.
No, they hear. They need to listen.
After I had my first child, I think it was maybe second, third month, I was just sad. I was sad. And I was a little bit angry. I was angry because I was so sad. Yeah. And I didn't understand why. And I didn't find out that I was experiencing postpartum depression until
halfway through.
Maybe, I think halfway through, like that 6-month mark. And I'm thinking to myself, why? Why is this happening? What is this feeling, this emotion? You go back to the doctor for that 6-week checkup, and it's, they ask you the questions and you go through it. And I'm thinking, maybe I may be feeling a little bit of that. But afterwards, how often they continue to follow up and ask you those same mental health questions. Because now it's like, oh no, I really feel it. Something is wrong. I feel like screaming. I did scream. I feel like crying. I am crying. Why am I overly crying? So the first time I asked the nurse that question when I went back to that 6-week checkup, it was like, oh, you're probably just tired. And I'm like, oh yeah, go home. Maybe I am tired. But this is 6 months later. And at that point, they still ask some of those similar questions or don't. You're looking at your chart and say, oh, this is what you said last time. Maybe marking it again. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh no, this is hitting me in a way that I don't even understand. Because at this point, I'm not even enjoying my baby. Mm-hmm. I'm not even enjoying my life. I think mental health is a huge part of it. It's not just physical. It is a mental experience and process that we go through. And it's like, how often is that overlooked? And then, not even receiving the care you need afterwards to just love your baby and love yourself after. So I don't know if you experience postpartum depression and but I mean, just thinking of your story, how sad it would make me.
I would say PTSD for me. Really, no, I don't recall getting any kind of check-in because from the conversations I've had with other moms is that as soon as that baby's out, all the attention goes to the baby and almost none to the mom. I don't remember being asked how I was really doing in the first few months after having my son. It was, how's the baby? How's the baby? But I almost died.
What about me? Yeah.
And, that not being acknowledged and postpartum depression screening, I don't remember that being a thing 14 years ago. I know we do it now, but no. And even one time I told a friend, I think I might need to go to a therapist. Girl, you're all right. Yeah. So just being dismissed. And so you get used to that. And so, of course, you're not going to really open up to a medical professional that you barely know when your own friends or family dismissed you. So, yeah, emotional support, mental health support, it's something that is so needed for the moms, especially for the moms, for the family in general, because, the partners go through changes too.
I think it's important to share my story, like I said, to number one, let people know who have if they can relate to any part of my story, that they're not alone. To educate, because I didn't have this education that I have now.
I really have been focusing on sharing my story to convince people to get a doula, try a midwife. I really believe that these outside, resources, all these resources, join some organizations and, learn about Sister Friends and learn about BIMFA and learn about even WIC, okay? Join all these organizations, because building this support community around yourself is really what let me have a better experience.
I feel like every birthing person should have a doula. And it's better to have a doula and not need a doula than to need a doula and not have a doula?
Telling my story, really, for me, it's trying to find a way to turn all the pain into purpose somehow. Like I had my son before I became a nurse. Never would have thought I would have wound up in OB and postpartum, but that's exactly where I wound up, and that was why. So that way I can tell my story. I can show that empathy. I can kind of think a little bit outside the box with the moms, to just kind of help them out and just try to allow them to have as positive of an experience as possible, because we're all entitled to having joyful birthing experiences. Yes. We shouldn't be in a round table talking about how we almost died. Yes. Or how someone who did die in childbirth or within or before the baby turned 1, or that the baby died for something that could have been prevented, because in most cases all of this can be prevented. And so telling this story for me is just one way, to use my voice and let all of my sisters know that it's okay to share your story. You don't have to keep it to yourself. You don't have to suffer in silence. You don't have to push through. You don't have to be the strong woman. You can take off that cape. Okay. And you can admit that this traumatized you, that this hurt, that whatever your feelings are, and that they're valid, and just open up these conversations just to educate each other and support each other, and also educate those of us in healthcare. We're human, and we all have biases. We all do. But really just trying to find a way to really consider the whole person to be fully human, and that they have emotions and thoughts and things like that. And really we're more than just whatever the condition is, because pregnancy is not a condition. It's really like just part of a beautiful life experience.
Oh, I just love that. Yeah. I love that, because I'm thinking about the fact that I want to share my story, because I want us to continue to have conversations like this, so it can be known and out in the open. You always hear, don't tell your business. I want my business out there. And I want it out there at this point, because I was so hurt and traumatized to where it took me 7 years to have another child, because I was fearful of that happening again, being scared and not being heard. And I'm so glad that I'm in a place now where I'm confidently saying that we want to be heard. Yeah. Just hear us and allow us to be who we are as powerful women and respectful women, to share our stories and for other women to just have a great experience. Thank you, Shanturi, Asia, Eve. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. And I just look forward to us continuing this journey to share our stories more in so many other capacities.